Hello, hello, hello. We're here at Premed office hours, Parade. I'm Dr. Wright, Scott Wright, and this is
Hi, I'm Dina Galini, one of the advisors here at Medical School Headquarters. Welcome.
there.
It's just the two of us. It's just the two of us today.
We're excited to
So,
be with you on this wonderful Wednesday afternoon, and we're going to be answering a lot of your questions, and we're going to be telling you all the things that you need to hear, whether or not you want to hear them, the other thing,
yeah,
but we'll see
yeah,
what you want to do. So Dina, tell them
yeah.
about yourself. All about Dina.
Sure. I'm a former senior admissions officer from Stanford School of Medicine. Also a former assistant director of advising for the SMP program at Brown, and worked in undergrad admissions, pre-health advising, and just help make dreams come true now.
Yeah.
Just the day after MCAS opened for submission, so it's been hectic.
Yeah.
It's been a busy week.
And MCAT scores came out today.
Yes,
From
MCAT scores
April.
came out today. Yeah,
From the end of April. And so I've already gotten a number of emails from students either crying or
yeah.
well, crying for good things or for bad things, either way. So
Yeah.
yeah.
How about you, Dr. Wright? A little bit about
Well,
you.
hello. I'm Scott Wright. I used to be in the admissions world for a long time as the director of admissions at UT Southwestern Med School in Dallas, and then also I retired as the executive director at TMDSAS, the Texas Medical School Application Service, and just have been around it for a long time, about 30 years, in fact. So crazy as that may sound,
That's a long time.
it is a long time. Holy cow!
Yeah.
I started, of course, when I was only 12.
I love it. I love it.
Just
Scott,
kidding.
you mentioned something. You said, the MCAT scores come out today for one of the later dates in April. I've had a lot of students who've gotten the scores back today and said, should I still apply? After they've perfected their whole application, if the score is not drastically lower than low or drastically off from their practice test, what kind of advice have you been giving students?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think that in my view, it kind of depends on the realities of the student outside of medical school stuff. So, for example, if a student I have one student who's a California resident, he got a 508. And this particular applicant knows that that's going to be tough to get into a California school with a 508.
Yeah.
And that's just probably not going to work. And they've got a few GPA issues and stuff as well. So, but the point here I'm trying to make is if students have the financial resources and the time resources to apply, even though they know their numbers maybe aren't the greatest or whatever, if finances are not an issue, and if the time to spend on the secondary applications is not an issue, I'm like, go ahead and try it. I mean, all they can say is no. And now, for a lot of students, finances are an issue, and so they don't want to spend $1,000, several $1,000s or more applying when their chances are pretty low of them getting in. So it's a real dilemma, I mean, what do you say to the students?
Yeah, I mean, I think if students are prepared, their application and it's perfected and ready to hit submit, and that score is not that far off, depending on all other circumstances, residency and things like that, then it's worth it. I mean, if you were testing, like getting scores of like a 516 on practice tests and you scored a 500, then maybe I would consider holding off, because to me, it seems like something might have went wrong with that test date. But if you were scoring like a 516 and you got like a 510, a 512, then I probably would still go for it, and make sure you alter your school list accordingly. That's, that's been interesting the last few weeks too. With students, overshooting with the list and trying to get across how competitive the process is.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, let's look at some of these
let's take some
questions and see what we've got here. Here we have a question from Gigi.
Hi, Gigi.
How important are small differences in science GPA versus overall GPA? Or academic overall GPA. I'm categorizing my courses and I don't know which will benefit me more, a 3.56 science GPA, 3.84, or a 3.53, or something in between. I mean, I'm not sure where you're getting these differences. I'm very confused too, Gigi.
And I'm confused with what you mean by what will benefit me more. You don't have a choice.
Right.
You can't send like either of those. Like schools see both of them. So
right. Well, and also I'm wondering if because she says I'm categorizing my courses, and I don't know which will benefit me more in terms of. I don't understand. So you're thinking some courses could be categorized in different ways as a science course as opposed to a non-science course, and I'm not sure what course that might be. I mean, I know some neuroscience classes sometimes don't count as science; they count as psychology. But beyond that, and that wouldn't be up to you necessarily. That would be, it is what it is, the class. So I don't understand.
You need to use the course classification guide from AAMC. They tell you what course falls under what category. So for example, I'm looking at it right now on my end. If you have like I don't know, I'm going to get a good example here. Like public affairs, right? Let's say you took like a public affairs class that categorizes under like government. That's, an AO course, right? You don't have a lot of flexibility. MCAT kind of tells you what counts as what.
Yeah.
So I would refer to that guide.
Yeah, and if we're misunderstanding your question, Gigi, please clarify. We can craft our answer if you can give us more information. That'd be helpful. Okay, so let's see here. Let's do. Oh, this is a good one. So E24 says, how concerning is a disparity between a 3.65 overall and a 3.3 science GPA for AdComs? I have a decent upward trend, except a final semester C in OChem 2, decent MCAT, good app, no other red flags. So it's really mainly this disparity between the overall and the lower science GPA. What do you think about that?
I think that admissions takes a holistic look, right? They're going to take a holistic look. They're going to look at both GPAs. They're going to look at that upward trend and evaluate everything, together. So it's the totality of your academic experience that's going to be, considered.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that, and I would say also that in my experience, it is a little bit concerning when the science GPA is
lower.
What I would say considerably lower. This is a 0.3 difference, almost 0.4 difference in the science GPA versus the overall GPA. Then when you add in a C and OChem 2 final semester, and I don't know what decent MCAT means.
What is
Uh,
decent MCAT?
yeah, what is that mean? I don't know what a decent MCAT is, and your feeling about it, E24. So a little bit more information, but in my view, anytime you have a pretty extensive difference between your overall GPA and your science GPA, that can be problematic. That's just
Yeah.
it's a little difficult to say outside of more details, but that could be a problem.
And then are there
So
other B's in those science
right,
classes, right? Because
right,
I think from an admission lens, if you see pretty much all B's and then a C, sorry, my allergies are so bad today. At the end of the day, a biomedical science curriculum is pretty tough, right? And will you struggle is going to be the question.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
All right.
All right, let's see here. Uh, Dawa, hey Dawa says, applying to how many DO schools would be enough if I have average stats for MD schools? Well,
You don't know.
yeah, I don't know, Dawa. I mean, it depends a little bit on what your numbers are, I guess, and but I mean, I don't know how many MD schools you're applying to, so I don't really know how to advise you in terms of DO schools. I can tell you that in my view, my students typically are somewhere between 20 and 30 schools total. Total applying to
Yeah.
the total number of schools. Is that about what you
Yeah,
advise
my
to?
average for my students I work with is usually around 27. I think the national
Yeah,
average for ICOMAS is 18.
yeah, yeah,
But this question depends on like location and what your stats are and other things.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Okay, here's another one. Secondary questions that ask to explain a low MCAT section. How would I approach this? What do you think, Dina?
Well, I would be honest, number one, and
Yeah,
I wouldn't make excuses,
yeah,
right? So if I would be honest and reflect on, I went into the MCAT like just maybe not preparing as well as I should have, or, I went into the MCAT and I, was really sick in the hospital, like offering some context, but I wouldn't make excuses. I
yeah.
wouldn't use it as an opportunity to say, but here's all the other great things about me.
Right, right.
Like that's not what that secondary space would be for.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you think?
Yeah,
You
I think
agree?
I agree with that completely. I think you just got to take ownership of it, and
Yep.
it is what it is. And if there was some other, like Dina said, if there was some other extenuating circumstance, like something bad happened at the testing center or one of the sections, and you got all like kind of discombobulated or whatever. Yeah, okay, tell us that. But otherwise, you just got to take ownership and say, I just didn't do as well as I wanted to or should have. So,
Yeah.
you know, don't know. Don't know. All right. Here's a good one. Cooper says, what resources do you guys recommend for MCAT studying? Personally looking for structured courses, but they all seem so similar. Thanks for your help. So this is a good question, and I'm going to suggest that this question sort of take us in a certain direction, but I'd like to, Dino, there's a lot of courses around that students can
Mhm.
take. Every MCAT, company has a course of some sort. Do you have any preferences? Do you have any thoughts on any ones of them that you think are better or worse, or that
I
Cooper should consider?
think it's about knowing how you best study, right? Like I always suggest to students, think back to how you studied for the SAT or the ACT in high school. Did you use a private tutor? Did you use a test prep company? Did you self-study and get a perfect score? That kind of, for me, sets like some history with how well you take tests. And I would just do, gather information. A lot of students use like Donkey Cards and UWorld and self-study, or you can, get a company to help you, but do they meet your needs is the bottom line.
Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to bring up is our new tutoring services that we offer from medical school headquarters. And our new guy for that is Petros Manassi, and he is been in the MCAT world for a long time, decades, and has a lot of experience with MCAT. And so we're establishing, or have established, and is functioning now, a tutoring service. So if you want, and I don't know a whole lot about it, and I think Petros has been on this program maybe a couple of times already. And what I would emphasize about it is the way that Petros and our company is approaching this is looking, just as you said, Dina, looking at the students as individuals. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you function better under? And then let's craft a plan to get you where you want to go based on those parameters. And so what I would say is, if you have questions about that, let me see if we have a banner about this. Let's see. Here's the thing about Petros. Let's see.
It's also on our website too.
Yeah, it's on our website.
Yeah,
exactly.
Find it.
I don't see one here. I'm wasting all our time, but I don't care. Well, I don't see anything here, so sorry, gang. But anyway, we do have, so you can find out more by going to our website and see at medicalschoolhq.net and find out more about our tutoring services. But Cooper, to the point that we're all trying to make here is that there's a lot out there, and you kind of have to figure out on the front end how you study best and how you do best in terms of preparing for tests like this, and then move forward with what that whatever that is. Okay.
Thanks, Cooper.
Yeah, Cooper is the man. Okay, let's see here. Starlight.
Starbright.
Yeah, first try to see tonight.
Right.
Hey, 2024 and 25 cycle had multiple interviews and currently on 4 wait lists. Awesome. Starting to feel the heat and pressure of needing to reapply, and starting letters have been sent to schools. Advice. What do you think, Dina, for Starlight? This is a tough time to wait.
It's a tough time. It's like purgatory.
It really is.
Yeah. I'm curious if the letters that you sent to school as one of those letters was a letter of intent, because I strongly suggest that. Sending a letter of intent, you can really only do that to one school. And it basically says, if offered admission off the wait list, I would commit to attend. At the point where schools are, really trying to fill that class, that could make a big difference. How long ago were the letters sent? Was it 2 months ago? Was it a month ago? Keep in touch with their admissions staff. Don't bombard them, but keep in touch. And then, there comes a point where you have to think about reapplying. Are you ready to reapply this cycle? Your MCAT score might expire, or is it next cycle? The issue I have with holding off is contacting your letter writers, because those letters would now need to be dated for 2025. And you don't want to spring that on letter writers the last minute. So even just communicating and saying, this is where I'm at. I'm on 4 wait lists. I'm really hoping things work out, but if they don't, this is my plan. and I would be humbled to use your letter again.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, and I would say, right about now, Starlight is when a lot of waitlist activity is happening. This is the
Yeah.
time that it's happening. The end of May, most of June, there's going to be a lot of shuffling
A lot
around.
of shuffling.
So, keep your hopes up,
Nominees.
light candles, whatever your sort of belief system
Put it
is.
out into the universe.
Do it, and hopefully things will work out for you. So, but
Good luck.
it's just a lot of waiting, and the waiting really is, kind of sucky. So,
Yeah.
sorry. All right. Nord, how important are publications for admissions? I have 4 publications, 2 first author and 2 second author for next year. 4th gap year, 4.0, low SES, FAP recipient, no MCAT yet, 250 hours, 250 hours only. I don't know what that means. So this is a really good question, and I think this is a good point to make for the applicants that are watching, and basically what this question comes down to is about research and the importance of research in the process, particularly with regard to publications. And what I would say, Nord, is that the medical schools at the end of the day are looking to understand why you want to go to medical school and what that's all about and what you aspire to do. And if you're really wanting to do research and you go into this and you've done a bunch of research, and you said you're on your 4th gap year, have you been doing research, and what's going on during this gap year? But what I would say is that if you're all into research, then publications are going to be very helpful in this process. They're going to, it's going to validate some of what you're going to say in terms of what you've learned about research and the value of the work that you've been doing. However, if you're not, if you're just kind of a typical applicant who's coming into this and just wants to do clinical medicine and is interested in research, but not at the, at an extreme point, then not having publications is not that big a deal, in my view. It's certainly could be helpful, but it's not going to necessarily, make up for a poor MCAT score, let's say. So Dina, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah.
It's kind of limited information here, but
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, publications aren't mandatory. I've seen people get into research schools with no publications. I've seen people not get in, right? It's not mandatory. I'm more concerned with you're in your 4th gap year, and you say you have 250 hours only, HR hours only. I'm not sure what that means. But at some point, like Dr. Wright said, the publications aren't going to make up for a low MCAT score or, make up for being out of the classroom for a long time either.
Right.
So I think there's so many different factors, but if you're banking on publications being like, that's going to get me in, that's not true. It's great that you have them, but I think there are so many other factors in admissions.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. Hello, I'm Oliver.
Hi, Oliver.
Applying next cycle. If I can show Florida and Michigan residents, and I have no bias to either schools in each state, what state should I put down on my application? Well, I always go with something like there's a lot more schools in Florida than there are in Michigan, so I would say be a Florida resident. It would probably benefit you more in that regard. What do you think, Dina?
Well, we have better weather here, so
yeah.
Right now, not so much. It's really hot in the summer. If you don't like hot weather, it's not the place for you. I think the number one thing is I would look at a sample of all of the schools. what qualifies for residency for those schools, because some schools might require a license or for you to prove that you've had a driver's license for like 1 year. So I would pay attention to that. And I think, where are there more schools? There are a lot of schools in Michigan, right? But where also do you have more ties and more like connections in terms of your experiences? That's a question we really can't answer. I know one school in Florida, FSU. It's all in state. I think they took 2 people out of state last year, and they were from Georgia. So, but for the most part, like there are people out of state getting into other Florida schools and Michigan schools. That's a personal decision. I would check all the guidelines for residency.
Yeah.
And educate yourself.
That.
And decide what kind of lifestyle you want too. It's a very different lifestyle in Michigan than Florida,
Okay.
Pack your sunscreen. You're coming here.
Yeah.
Pack your sunscreen.
All right. Michael says, can I use the other impactful experiences essay to discuss a red flag? My GPA was going up until senior year when personal tragedy in the fall led to a sharp drop in my GPA. I would say sure.
Yes.
I think that's a very appropriate place to discuss that. Especially if there was some kind of personal tragedy, then that certainly fits within the context of other impactful experiences.
Yes.
So yeah, I would say absolutely. It's a 1,325 character essay that you can use to, talk about whatever was going on.
Yeah. I always like to say to students like who are on the fence about another impactful essay, like if someone reading gets to a point in your application where they're like, I wonder what happened here. I want more context, and you don't provide the context, then you should have done another impactful essay. Like if I got to the point where those grades dropped and there was no context behind it, and I was like, I wonder what happened. Oh, here's what happened. The student wrote about it. I think it clears things up for the reader. So I think it's smart.
Yep. Agreed. I totally agree with that. Let's see here. Let's find another way. James had an advisor say to me that admissions committees don't like seeing physician shadowing on applications under North Carolina. Is this true? Are medical schools trying to phase out shadowing?
I have a lot to say about this. What do you think?
Go ahead. Tell me.
It's not necessarily good advice, James, at all. It wouldn't be a category as one of the 19 categories for your activity sections if it wasn't something that medical schools wanted to see. Now, a caveat to that is, are you using physician shadowing in place of a clinical experience? Because if that's the case, then no, they don't like to see shadowing in place of direct patient care. But shadowing and observation is important. But keep in mind, it's also passive and you're watching, and you need to balance that with clinical experience. But I haven't heard of anyone phasing out watching a physician and learning what this world of medicine is about. That doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry.
I agree. All right, let's see here. Hey, Ashley says, I've retaken the MCAT twice and scored a 503 and a 501. I plan to apply to DO schools, but I'm unsure if I should try to retake the MCAT again and apply next cycle or just apply with my current scores. Well, Ashley, this is a bit of a dilemma. I think 503, 501. So, you're going to, at a lot of schools, you're going to get the advantage of the 503, the higher of the two scores. And I think you're going to have to, some of it's going to depend on your GPA. as well as other things that you've done in terms of how the DO schools are going to view your application. So the question about whether or not to retake the MCAT, I wouldn't say rush into it to try to take it again for this coming cycle. I mean, I have a lot of students that try to do that. They get the MCAT score at the end of May, and then it's not very good, or whatever. It's not as good as they wanted, and they're going to try to retake it a month later. They haven't looked at MCAT books in a month, and so now they're going to try to get ramped back up in a month. I just don't see that working very well. I don't like that kind of plan. So hopefully you're not thinking about doing that. I mean, Dina, this is kind of one of those questions where it's kind of gray area, on the fence kind of things, right?
Yeah, I think it's on the fence, and I think there also has to be some reflection of what went wrong, right? Because you can't just jump in and take it a third time without really taking a look at where the deficits were. Were there gaps in content? Was it test taking strategy? And maybe after assessing that, if you really think that you can make an improvement with that, dedicated improvement with it by taking it again next cycle, then that's what I would do.
Yeah.
But it's a personal choice. Yeah.
I agree. Let's see. Okay.
Oh, this is right up your alley.
Yes. Verify activities without any reference contact section. Should I include them in the anything else part of my second?
This is a good question.
So the question is, okay, how does TMDSAS verify activities without any reference contact section?
So there's the assumption here that activities are verified on AMCAS as well.
Correct. And right? this I will tell you, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Safala, I will tell you that in my opinion, and Nina, you can tell me your opinion about this, the percentage of activity contacts that are made in a given year is about 0%.
It's about 0%, maybe 0.0000001%.
Yeah, maybe.
In an extenuating, if something doesn't add up, like literally, like there's a letter of recommendation from the activity that is vastly different than the activity description. Nobody has time to contact anybody. So no, I would not include them.
No, you don't want to include anything like that. Safala, they're not, even for AMCAS, they're not going to contact anybody. Nobody's got time for it. You're exactly right, Nina. So no worries there. No worries at all.
You're good.
Yeah, you're good.
That TMDSAS, I love doing things a little differently.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here is one from Shubene. Sam, we'll just call you Sam. Worked over 3 years as a certified medical assistant. I worked 1 year respiratory and the other at a sleep department. I only shadowed one doctor who's a family doctor. Do I need more? More shadowing? I would say yes, you do.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I think you want to get a variety of different people if possible. Family docs are good, primary care is good, specialty, surgical, just try to get a kind of a variety. And I'm not saying a huge number of hours, I would say even like maybe 40, 50 hours or something like that should be fine. I mean, you obviously got a lot of experience in healthcare, so, but I do think they're going to be looking for some shadowing hours.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Again, it wouldn't be its own category if it wasn't valued. So.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Drago, thank you for being here. I don't know what says what ways I can impress admissions officers in the terms of ECs. I mainly participate in local community service. I heard others running organizations. Okay. I don't know what the question is, actually.
I don't either.
I don't know what ways I can impress admissions officers in terms of extracurriculars. Well, I mean, there's basic things that you need to be thinking about doing. You need to be thinking about shadowing doctors. You need to be thinking about clinical contact experiences where you get involved with applicants. Community service stuff is good. Local community service stuff is great. They're going to be looking for that. So, a lot of different things they're going to be looking for. So I think Drago, I guess, depends on like what, where are you in the process? Are you a freshman? Are you about to apply? And so kind of where are you in the process? You would need to think one of the things I would recommend you doing is getting Dr. Gray's book on the application process, the sort of the overview book, and read it, and it would give you some ideas a little bit on how to. Now, I don't think it's framed in the context of how to impress admissions officers, but I do think it's framed just in the context of how to best put your best foot forward in the process. Dina, any comments on that one?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you don't want a checklist and you want experiences that are authentic and that mean a lot to you. So, I think just not thinking of it in terms of how can I impress, but like what value does this have to me in my journey, I think is more important.
I agree with that. Here you go. If I'm an older nontrad, have years of older clinical experiences, then something with son, autism, ADHD, whatever, then shadowed oncologist, can I include shadowing in my personal statement? We don't recommend that you include shadowing in your personal statement just because it's so passive. You don't do anything. You're just watching. Now, I have seen some people put shadowing experiences as watering events in their personal statement.
Yeah, me too.
You can do it in an effective way, but I would say it's not optimal.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of students do it. I have a lot of students that have done it, who maybe don't have as many clinical experiences or experiences to talk about. But like you said, it has to be in an effective way. It can't just be, I shadowed someone for 5 hours. Is it someone you spent, in a shadowing internship for 300 hours in a summer? And is it something a little more substantial?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And did that shadowing with the oncologist lead to other things? Like this shadowing with the oncologist was pivotal for me because it sparked my interest in then volunteering for hospice and then doing volunteer work, raising money for cancer awareness. Like if it's something that was a catalyst, then I think that that's different.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Here's another question.
Amira,
do I really need a master's? I have an upward trend, some C's in first year and a half, but will end up at 3.45 and 3.25, 3.3 science GPA, 90 credits, biomed major. Had A and B in higher science courses since. Well, there's not a whole lot of information here, Amira, but I think the 3.25 science GPA is pretty low, and that would concern me. Some of that is going to be affected by, where you're considering applying, and if you're considering DO and MD, that's going to be a factor to consider. So, I mean, you could do it without a master's, but certainly a master's would be helpful in terms of GPA, addressing the GPA in a appropriate way. So, what do you think, Dina?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's, we mentioned this before, it's about demonstrating your competency to handle what is the most rigorous education in this country, to jump into a biomedical sciences curriculum where like 3 weeks worth of curriculum is equivalent to like a semester of undergrad. And have you proven that you can demonstrate success, that you will be able to demonstrate success in that? You can also, I mean, I used to help run a special master's program, and I would take phone calls all the time from prospective students like yourself and just kind of talk out and see if a master's program or postbac would be a good fit. And you can do that. You can, just connect with people in admissions and make some phone calls, but that science GPA is a little low.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Okay. I just graduated college. Hooray, hooray, with a 3.21 and a 2.98 science. I got F's and D's my freshman year. Ugh. Last fall, I got 2 C's in my biochem and biostats courses due to major health issues. I got a 4.0 taking 21 credits. Oh, do we have an end to this? Oh, 21 credits. 2 science courses with lab, micro, and marine biology. And taking MCAT in August, took 2 practice exam, 1 and scored average enrollment. So, am I on the right track showing growth? Wow, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Okay, let's go back up here. So, just graduated college, so you got, basically low GPA, low science GPA. Last fall, 2 C's in some pretty major classes, biochem and biostats. Got a 4.0, taking 21 credits. And 2 science courses with lab, taking MCAT. Okay, so, I mean, I get that you're on a process. Yes, you're in the process of going and doing school and all that stuff. The GPA is going to be a problem. It doesn't matter if you took 21 credit hours last semester. A GPA that low is going to be problematic. And it also doesn't matter in a lot of ways if you blew the top out of the MCAT with a GPA that low. What that says to me as an admissions officer is that you have the aptitude to be doing great, but you can't translate that into sitting in the classroom and doing well. That's a disparity that, as an admissions officer, I don't want to go there. You haven't showed me that you can be a student and do it well. So that's what you're going to have to show. And so if you're likely going to have to go back to school, maybe do a special master's program to make that.
Well, they said they're enrolled in a postbac.
Oh, he's enrolled in a postbac in Southern California. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. I mean, that's what you're going to have to do is do the postbac, and hopefully you'll be able to do well. You don't have the luxury of a whole lot of B's. Let me just say that, and no C's. It's all going to be really heavily A-related classes. You just got to do really well from here on out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Ended freshman year with an A- in a research subject. It has been unfair subjective assessment and request any guidance on approaching grade update as I have all A's except
oh my God.
assignments. I mean,
oh, Mads.
honey, you're way overthinking
You're
this.
overthinking it. It's an A
Don't
minus. It's not a
don't
D, an F.
just be happy. I know it ruins the 4.0, but in the grand scheme of things, this
This
is
is
a little
nothing. It's
nothing, a blip.
literally a fly that flies
Yeah,
by.
yes,
It's
yes. So
yeah,
no, don't. Spend your time thinking about other things, and
yeah,
this is not something you need to be
no, no.
lamenting over. So
Move
yeah.
on.
All right. Uh, Here we go. Ibrahim, and I have a question about hours. Whatever applications I've seen covered on Med School HQ always have more hours than me. I have 250 clinical hours, 250 non-clinical hours, and 150 research, and 70-ish shadowing. Okay.
It's not bad.
That's not bad.
It's not bad.
I'm assuming when you say non-clinical that you're talking about just
Community
volunteering.
service.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
150 research is pretty, not that much really, frankly, but
yeah.
that I don't think that would cause you any problems. But I think a lot of this is going to be based, Ibrahim, on and what Dina was just talking about a few minutes ago, reflection. How are you reflecting on these things that you have seen and done, and what level of the depth can you provide in terms of that reflection? What this has meant to you? What you've learned out of these things?
No, I think I'm on here alone. I think Dr. Wright just maybe had some trouble. So I'll finish the comment here for Abraham. I think that it's a combination of everything that you've done. Definitely know the averages. Like I think the average last cycle you disappeared.
I don't know what happened.
It's okay. I think the average last cycle for community service is about 474, and every school will value a certain number of hours differently depending on their mission statement and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Keep chipping away. You just ghosted me.
I know. I don't know what happened. I was just talking, and all of a sudden, zoop, and I
It's
had to
okay.
log back in and
It's
stuff.
all
So
good. I won't be
I don't know.
offended.
I don't know what was happening. It's so weird. All right. Let's see here. Oh, here's a good one. Oops, where'd he go? As a D1 athlete, I have no research experience, so I have solid clinical and shadowing hours when I had chances to get them in the summers,
Mm,
etc. Is it even worth my time applying to top schools? Um, what do you think, Dina?
it's hard for athletes. It's really, really hard for athletes. I think I talked about this in a few of my interviews for our med school years podcast. If you check out our podcast the last few weeks, I spoke to a med student, Kelsey, and a med student, Sabrina, who were both athletes. And we talk about how difficult it is being an athlete and being pre-med, because a lot of coaches won't even take athletes if they hear that they're pre-med, because you just don't have a lot of time, right? You don't have a lot of time to be in the lab. And I think that that's understandable. I think you need to look at those schools, and if they are heavy research institutions where they're very clear that research is important to them, and you have no research hours at all, then I would make sure that your list is not too top heavy, and that you do have a lot of schools that maybe are better fits for your clinical involvement and experience. But another way to really get research too is hit the pavement. Contact professors, contact doctors, see if anyone can take you on, for research and clinical trials, things like that. I know a lot of students that do a lot of remote research that way, and they've had a lot of luck with that.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Bill to Nordic. whatever that means. Does taking prereqs one at a time look less favorable for an applicant, i.e., does it highlight that they may not be able to handle the rigor of medical school, regardless of if they did well? I would say yes. I don't, it kind of depends a little bit on the whole picture, academically and otherwise, in my view. But I think that there are some issues with just taking prereqs. Number one, it's going to take you a long time to
Long
take
time.
prereqs and
Yeah.
just being ready. But I think that you need to think about that. Yes, it could affect how it might look. I think.
Yeah. And some schools, like, I do know that some schools are different in terms of, like, you can't take a certain number in one semester, or you have to take this before that. And, that's a different, and you kind of have to work with your school to plan out your classes, but one at a time. I think it's going to be a shock for you when you enter med school and you get them all at once.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe a few more questions
I think
here.
one or two more.
Yeah, I think one or two
Really
more.
good one right here. How about this one? Sam says, for hardship or adversity essays, is it okay to write about complicated family relationships, conflict between parents, and navigating that situation or environment, or is that too personal or negative? Well, I don't think it's too personal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they want you to know about. And as terms of the negative, I mean, a lot of times our adversity is negative. That's just sort of goes with the territory. That's the reason it's adverse, is because it's,
Yeah.
it impacting you in a negative way. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, I definitely think that these types of things are what they're wanting to see in essays. Have there been things about your life that have impacted you, potentially causing you to have maybe a less, less high GPA, or maybe it affected your MCAT score, or maybe it affected your ability to get a lot of shadowing hours, or clinical hours, or whatever, things like that. So I think they do want to know about that stuff. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. All right.
All right, one more.
Yeah, let's do one more. Let's see. Here we go. How would you approach applying as an out-of-state student, as a Texas resident applying to both TMDSS and AMCAT? Wait, how would you approach applying to out-of-state schools as a Texas resident applying to both? So I guess what the question is, you're a Texas resident and you're applying to schools outside of Texas. Is that how you read that?
Yeah, that's how I read it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you just
apply.
you just apply. I mean, it's like for most schools that have residency rules, you're either a resident of that state or you're not. That there's no other differentiation typically. I mean, there are some schools where, like up in the northeast, west, they have that thing with University of Washington. Yeah. So that's a little bit different, but otherwise, if you're applying to a North Carolina school and you're not a North Carolina resident, it doesn't matter if you're from Hawaii or Alaska or Texas, you're going to be treated the exact same. So, you just apply to the schools that you're interested in, where you think, you fit their sort of profile, and that's what you do. So, right?
Great questions today.
Yeah, man. Excellent questions today. So, thank you for joining us, and
Thank you.
I hope you have a good rest of your day and a good rest of your week. And we'll be back again next week to answer all your questions. Dina, any last words?
Yeah, just good luck to everyone who's applying this cycle. Just just try to compartmentalize things and get through one phase of the application cycle at a time.
Yep.
Okay.
I agree. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a great day.